Morning, everyone. This is podcast 11. This morning we are joined by Miss Lawrence, and also we have another guest interview this morning, which is David, who is in year 10. So I'm going to hand over to them. This podcast is thinking about interviews, and that isn't just kind of job or employment related ones, but actually also thinking about interviews and presentations that you might need to do in a school setting or for sixth form. So things that are a bit more relevant to you guys at the moment. So I'm going to hand over to David to ask Miss the first question.
Why do you think developing Oracy skills is important?
Well, I think being able to communicate what you're thinking clearly, verbally, gives everybody a sense of power. If I look at my nephew, who is currently 2.5, he is just learning words, but he gets really cross and really frustrated when he can't say the things that he wants to say to my sister. In fact, that is often the start of his real meltdowns, when he desperately wants to communicate, but he can't. And I've travelled the world quite a lot, and I find myself when I go to other countries and I can't speak the language and I can't communicate verbally what I need to communicate, I feel really powerless. I feel like I'm stuck, and I feel like I can't do the things that I want to do. And I'm quite an independent person. I like to be able to achieve goals, and I like to be able to do the things that I want to be able to do. But if I can't do that verbally, I feel incredibly frustrated. So I think having strong Oracy skills doesn't just empower you in a workplace, but gives you the chance as a person to really kind of demonstrate and feel your power in this world, and being able to kind of communicate what you feel and what you think in most situations will enable you to have like a meaningful experience with the people around you.
Okay. Do you have an example of when in your professional or personal life that you have needed good Oracy skills?
Good question. So professionally, I would say here I am in a school. Every single day in school, I have different scenarios where I have to tailor how I speak to people. So from a student in the nursery school to Mr. Camia, who is my line manager, I have to really think about how I speak to those people, and they need a completely different register. They need a completely different tone. I have to completely change the words that I use with those students or with my line manager. And so professionally, like the full range comes out. I'd say personally, in terms of communicating with people verbally, there'll be a real mixture of things, from perhaps you've got to support somebody with something that's gone wrong and you need to think about the tone and how you approach that scenario, all the way to perhaps in a personal situation where you're trying to like encourage people and get them to do things a bit quicker, or a bit kind of more kind of support you to get something done. You have to be a bit persuasive sometimes, and you've got to be persuasive without being rude, and that's a bit of a skill, I think, as well.
How will developing your Oracy skills support you in an interview situation? What skills did you have to employ?
Yeah, so I would say in an interview scenario, be it a job one, be it a sixth form one, or even a year 9 one, when you're picking your options, the first thing that people understand about you in an interview is the words you're using, the way you're speaking, how you speak. Quite often I say to students, it's not what you said, it's how you said it that either comes across really well, or sometimes comes across perhaps a little bit aggressive, or perhaps a little bit rude. So getting your tone right in an interview, appearing excited, enthusiastic without seeming too aggressive, or sometimes when we're really excited, when we're really passionate about something, our tone can become slightly aggressive, or if we're nervous and in an interview, nerves often get the better of us. So being able to communicate verbally still calmly and strongly is really key, and kind of really planning. For me, verbally, I'm always stronger when I've rehearsed what I'm going to say, when I've put some notes together, when I've planned what I'm going to say. And that's really good advice, I think, for any type of interview. But also, before you go into an interview, having said it out loud to somebody else, so rehearsed and practiced, when you hear what you're saying to other people, it suddenly becomes very real and you realise the mistakes that you're making when you're speaking. Whereas if you just say it over and over in your own head, you don't always hear how it sounds. You don't practice your tone, you don't practice all the other bits that kind of go with verbal communication. And oracy is tricky because it's having a good range of words and being able to kind of communicate your abilities through your words, but it is also tone and register as well, which does have an influence. So just thinking about register, when you're going into an interview, it's got to be what we call the formal register. It's got to be using kind of standard English in terms of sort of punctuation and the words we're picking. Using slang in an interview doesn't get us very far. It often gives people the wrong impression. And whether we like it or not, whether it's right or wrong, in interviews, people are building an impression of us. And one of the first ways they build their impression of us is how we talk, how we communicate. And I think we're going to go on to talk a bit more about interviews, but there's some real skill in how you talk in an interview as well.
Yeah. Sometimes at interviews or as part of your work or studying, you may be asked to do a presentation.
Yeah.
What tips would you give to students who are preparing and delivering a presentation?
Well, a bit like I was saying with interviews, is preparation and planning is key. If in a presentation you don't know what you're going to say, you feel more nervous. There's some research done about what people find the scariest thing in the world to be. And you might think it's spiders, you might think it's a house burning down, but really high on the list is loads of people have a fear of public speaking. They absolutely dread giving a presentation. And part of that dread is because you feel incredibly nervous when you're stood up in front of people. But to remain cool and calm and to be able to kind of manage those nerves, having practiced what you're going to say is really key. I am a big fan of what I call cue cards, so having like a little revision card where you don't write absolutely everything down that you're going to say, because when you're stressed at the front of the stage, you're probably not going to be able to read everything in minute detail. You just want a few points on a card that trigger your memory about what you're going to say. And because you've rehearsed it, because you've practiced it, when you see those bullet points, it completely triggers your memory and then your thoughts come back to you and it becomes much easier to speak. In terms of giving a presentation, you want to have as little as possible on any kind of slides or any information you're giving out to people. You want to be able to rely on the fact that you're going to be able to explain your thoughts very clearly, and you want to be able to rely on the fact that a key part of the presentation is the person delivering it with a really engaging kind of way of doing that. So I often think trying to tell a story is a really good way to give a presentation. Try to take people on a journey, start people off, sort of hook people in. Sometimes a bit of an anecdote can work. Hook people in and then take them on that journey with your words. So you're not relying on the things behind you, but you as the presenter are really engaging the audience with the things that you're saying. And none of that happens by chance. It's crafted. Somebody like Barack Obama, who used to give incredible speeches when he was president, didn't stand up on the stage the day before, a few minutes before, and just kind of bring these incredible speeches and presentations to life. He'd had a speechwriter, he'd had sessions in his calendar where he'd practiced his presentations and his speeches days and days and days before, and then on the day, he gives this very polished speech, but it's not by chance. And I think that's the key thing about interviews and presentations: preparation, making sure you've practiced it. It's not like a chat with your friend, which comes to your mind quite easily. It's definitely something where you're trying to impress people. And the way that you communicate that verbally has such an impact on whether people think you're doing a good job or not. So you really do have to practice it.
And I think this is why we're sort of giving students lots of opportunities in English to do it. So from everyone in year 7 to 10 had last half term homework to research the first woman to do something. And then, David's in my year 10 class and there's 28 students in there, and we spent 2 hours just with everybody presenting. And actually, yes, it was about kind of researching those women, but it was also about developing that confidence to stand up in front of the class, deliver something, even if it went horribly wrong. The more times you do it, the more kind of confident you become.
Absolutely.
And without those opportunities to do it, however scary it may seem when it feels like your teacher's forcing you to do it, actually, it's to make sure that, you know, for later on in life, this is something that comes second nature, and that's less scary, and that we don't miss out on opportunities through the fear of not wanting to stand up and present effectively in front of people. And definitely next half term, as part of Oracy Week, in different lessons, there will be opportunities to present. In tutor time, there'll be opportunities to present as well. And I think most of the people that have spoken on the podcast have said, in order to get better at this, it's about practice. So as a school, we're really thinking about where we can give students opportunities to practice these skills. And I would just say, and Miss, I'm sure you'd agree, just to make the most of all the opportunities that students have.
Absolutely, yeah. And every job I've gone for since I've been 18, I've had to present in some kind of way. And it is, you know, it is nerve-wracking, it is scary, but when we get good at something, it's actually quite enjoyable. And, you know, as teachers, we stand up and present every single day. And when you first train as a teacher, the thought of standing up in front of students is absolutely harrowing. You're like, oh, how am I ever going to do this? 10 years down the line, you don't even think about it. You don't even think, oh gosh, how am I going to stand in front of this group of 30 people? And I think that's testament to the fact that practice really makes a difference. And there's kind of no getting away from it, that one of our main forms of communication in this world is verbal speech, is, you know, oracy. We use it so often and so regularly, and it genuinely has an impact on how people view us and how well people receive us. So I hope all will take those opportunities that Miss Woodford-Smith is talking about, because I know that not all schools give students those opportunities to kind of redevelop their skills. So it's good that we can do that here at Prendergast Vale.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, then thinking about how we support each other in developing these skills, because we can only do this in the lessons and develop it if people are mature and if people trust each other, and we kind of develop that culture of respect where it's okay to stand up and give it a go and make mistakes, and accepting that it's kind of a process and that we're all going to develop that together. So thank you so much, Miss, for joining us, and thank you, David, for asking the questions. And this is the last podcast of this half term, so we will be back next half term with some more podcasts for you and a bit more information about the Oracy Week.